All right. Now, thank you everyone for being here. My name's Evan. I'm the Chief of Staff at Holistic Software, and I'm joined today with my colleague Matt.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining. We definitely really appreciate it. As far as the webinar today, we're going to be talking about embedded analytics, going through some content around that, and showing you a couple examples as well as far as things that you can do within the embedded analytics offering that Holistics has. So to kick things off, let me pull up our slides and I'll go through some updates, what we've been up to as a company, and we'll get into the meat of the presentation, just showing some of the features, functionality around embedding. And then finally, we will end it with some Q&A for anybody who has any questions. So give me 1 second here. I'm just going to pull up my screen and we'll get to it.
Thanks, Zachary. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the Q&A box, and I'll be helping to moderate this session, and I'll be able to help us take these questions either as part of the presentation or during the final Q&A session.
Awesome. Evan just called out. Is my screen coming through?
Looks perfect.
Cool. Yep, so as I mentioned, we'll just go through some general updates about our latest releases, then we'll get into some of the embedded analytics use cases and content around that, then we'll finish it off with the Q&A. So first thing I just want to call out is a little side project our engineering team built out, and basically it is a free tool to help you better understand the relationships between all the tables in your database, basically better understand your schema, and you can export those out as a SQL query. You can see a link down here. It's just dbdiagram.io. So as far as some exciting updates within the Holistics product offering, I'll go through these really quick. You can now use SFTP to export data out of Holistics. You can import Google Analytics data into your reporting database. We've made some updates to conditional formatting as well. Something else that we've done is auto preload so that you can reduce wait time on your queries by having kind of improved caching settings. Additionally, you can now have more control over pulling data out of Holistics with this scheduler. So to get into the embedded analytics webinar, I'm just going to start with this slide really quick. One of the things that I think a lot of companies understand is data processes are just very important to organizations as a whole. This quote by Gartner, I really like it, but basically, more than 3,000 CIOs decided that business intelligence or analytics is one of the top differentiating technologies within their organization. And that can mean many different things to different companies. But I want to talk about that relative to embedded analytics specifically. So embedded analytics is really kind of this idea of putting visualizations back into your product such that customers can use data, especially the data that you're creating for them, to drive decision making. So I pulled some examples from Salesforce, one of the leading SaaS products out there. And you can see here that they have a concept of reports and dashboards within the product as well. And it's one of the huge things about Salesforce is you log a lot of data with them. They need a way of providing that data back to you. That is done through kind of this concept of dashboards, which are charts, and reports, which are lists. But a lot of other SaaS applications have this need of providing data back to their customers so that they can use that data to drive the decision making. It's also really important just around showing the value of your application. So being able to say like, hey, you use us, you log this data, and now we can show it back to you. Goes a very long way towards showing the value of your own particular SaaS app. So there's a few kind of key questions that organizations ask when they are building out some sort of embedded BI offering or building out a BI offering. First one that I really like to call out is the developer resources necessary to build and maintain it. Whether that's building it yourself, going with kind of a legacy enterprise solution, or going with something a little more agile like Holistics. The next thing is the time to value and quantifying that. And I'll have a slide a little bit later just kind of calling some of that out. But it's like, how long is it until you're going to be getting value from your embedded analytics offering? The next component is the ease of use or ease of setting it up. What does that look like? Is it something where you have to have a whole team of people coding away? Or is it something like Holistics where you can basically embed it via iframe, similar to putting a YouTube video into your application? And then finally, it's the functionality. What are you getting at the end of the day? And what sort of interactivity are you looking to provide to your customers?
Yeah, so Matt, maybe for those of our viewers who are based in Asia, maybe you could share a little bit about what the embedded analytics scene is like in the United States.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Thanks, Evan. So as far as embedded analytics, especially in the United States market, I'm going to talk about it relative to software, as that's kind of my general experience. But one of the huge things just involved in creating a SaaS application is it's almost become table stakes at this point, where you need to be able to provide some level of reporting back to your customers. So people tend to use your SaaS application. They want to see how they're interacting with it. So in Zendesk, for example, a support application that's very popular, might be like showing back to the customer how many tickets were answered. Salesforce could be something like number of leads created in a week. But there's just a lot of very core important business metrics or things that people want to see that need to be provided back to them in some capacity. So one of the, I guess, huge offerings, or at least in my experience in the United States, especially in software, like I said, it's kind of become table stakes. It's almost a requirement in a lot of business applications to be able to have some level of reporting provided to your customers. Evan, did that help?
I think that's so true. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Especially in the SaaS scene, I believe that seems to be the exact requirement. That if you're offering a SaaS service and you don't have analytics, it's going to raise a lot of questions.
Yeah, and actually that's a really good point. Not to get too derailed here, but many times in companies that have a SaaS application that doesn't have reporting for customers, that burden tends to fall a lot on the product team or the customer success team. They have to maybe answer one-off questions or create usage reports. It's kind of these one-offs for customers. They have to find a way of presenting that data to them. That could involve a lot of tedious manual processes. In companies that, for example, like with Holistics, or companies that like weren't working with us before, then implemented Holistics, they might be creating bar charts in Excel and sending those like manually. And if you are a customer success person, you might need help from the engineering team to find the right fields to pull from. And, that just can involve a lot of company resources, especially at a lean SaaS company that they don't necessarily have, to be able to provide something like what we're showing you right here. So yeah, as far as the experience, I suppose, around embedded analytics, like I said, it really kind of is a thing that a lot of customers really, customers of SaaS products really want to see. And at the same time, there's a lot of software companies that don't have the bandwidth or the resources to create something themselves. And that's really where embedded analytics comes into play, where you might have a team of developers, whether you're a huge company or a small company. And the really kind of important questions to ask is, do you want your developers working on something that's already been built? Or do you want to implement something that can plug into your web app very quickly? And I can get into maybe the time to value slide that I created shortly here, and just kind of like call out, what we typically see as far as like implementing one of those projects. So we'll go back to Holistics really quick, but basically, we can take care of the embedded dashboards and reports for you in your application, so you don't have to build it out from scratch. And we help the entire pipeline. So everything from the ETL data modeling all the way through to the end visualization. And I'll just pull up this slide really quick too, like what our customers have to say. Holistics embedded analytics allows people to focus really on their core technologies without having to also focus on implementing or creating a BI tool within their existing SaaS product. So this is a calculation that I like to kind of play out. So this is actually based on a colleague of mine. They had some experience embedding or creating their own embedded analytics product within their SaaS application, or a friend of mine, excuse me. And this is how long it took. And this is pretty standard across a lot of companies. So the first step is collecting and organizing the data pipeline. Holistics helps here, but this is something that definitely, for any company, this process right here tends to take a long time. The next component is the dashboard development and integration. And this is where Holistics can shave off a significant amount of time in setting up your embedded analytics offering. Especially if you already know what you want to see and you've created those requirements around the collecting and organizing the data pipeline. With Holistics, you could have really one developer finish everything in about 2 weeks, as opposed to if you were to build it yourself, for example, which is what this is showing. It could be 3 developers and then 3 developer months. We always, that said, when working with time to value and really kind of like working with any software project, there's always delays and issues. And that could be anywhere from 1 month of delay per developer to more. As anyone who's ever built a software product knows, things just tend to take longer, drag out, things that weren't taken into account always come up. So it could take, a significant amount of time to build out, an embedded analytics offering yourself. That said, if you were to go with something like Holistics, for example, we can shave down a significant amount of that time. And if you know what you want to collect and you need to help organizing your data pipeline, we do have a lot of ETL functionality built in the product as well to help streamline this process too. So if there's no more questions there, I can get into embedding dashboard iframes into an existing web page, and I can show some of that functionality. So I'll pause here for a second, and I'll pull up my Holistics example here. So the first kind of step, this is our Holistics demo environment. You can see here I can have a standard B2B SaaS dashboard. You can see your visualizations here. And I'm just going to come in and I'm going to create a simple ad hoc filter. I'm doing this here just to kind of illustrate an example. It's not necessarily the best practice, but from here, I'm going to come in, I'm going to select our embed link. I'm going to create a new link. And I'm going to be showing you basically how to embed this into a little web page here. So this is our internal web app. I'm just going to put the dashboard into here. So the first step within Holistics is generating an embed link. So I'm just going to hit create here, and we'll create that embed link. The next piece is copying our secret key. And I'm going to go into our integration guide. And this, I'm going to place the key in here. I'm going to put my customer ID here, and I'm going to hit submit. What's going to happen is Holistics is going to render this dashboard for us. And you can see what that looks like here. The next step is I'm going to take some code, or basically take the code for the iframe. I'm just going to copy and paste. I'm going to put it into this embedded web app here. So I'm going to edit this really quick. I'm going to go to the HTML. I'm going to copy and paste this in. I'm going to hit update. And then I'm just going to align this in the center. And I'm going to hit the save button up here. What's going to happen is Holistics is now going to run, and we're going to see that dashboard in our web app right there.
Yeah, that's exactly like an example I like to give. That it's really a copy and paste of the iframe, especially if you have the same dashboard that you want to show on your web page to your different customers. It's just like pasting a YouTube video right in there.
Yeah, and the thing I'll say there too is I'm not a developer by any means. I'm a salesperson. I'm able to do this. So the bar, the bar for implementing holistics embedding is pretty low, which is actually a good thing when it comes to working with this. The next kind of example I'm going to show is basically a live embedded dashboard linked to a customer filter. So being able to provide a specific customer analytics and dashboards. And really kind of the use case here is customers want to see their own sets of data when they access a dashboard. So when it comes to embedded analytics, the general recommendation that we have for people is as much as possible, you should templatize your dashboards. The reason is it's just much easier for you to manage. That said, if you do have dashboard templates, of course, the data is going to be changing per customer. So to show kind of an example of how to do this, you can see here, we already have a customer filter on the dashboard. So you can see the various customers that we have here. Then we also have some other filters like the role and the date range, et cetera. The process for pulling up an example of this is really pretty similar to the previous example. But I'm just going to pull up an embed link. I'm going to create a new link again. Once again, I'm going to hit test. And I'm going to create a customer filter for the customer. And I'll show kind of like what that looks like later, or just in a second here. I'm going to hit create. Once again, I'm going to copy my secret key, and I'm going to open up the integration then. I'll paste this in. So the customer ID for us, this is really just kind of a simple value of 1. We have our customers, we just kind of number them. So in the filter example, it showed the customer's name, but in our database, we just count as 1. And the next customer's 2, and so on. Or in our example database, excuse me. But I'll hit submit here. And you can see that once again, we'll run the queries and pass that through with this customer ID of 1, meaning we only see the data for this one specific customer. A couple things I'd like to call out as well is you can still come in and you can still toggle these filters, and these filters can persist through. So one of the things that people really like about holistics is they can set up global filters on a dashboard, and then those customers can actually call those filters in the embedded offering. So in the previous example I showed, I did not select that the filters were dynamic, which means that the filters do not apply and customers can't use those filters or don't pass through. In this example, I turned the filters to dynamic so that customers can come in, they can change toggles so they can help maybe answer their own questions on a dashboard level. So, once again, as I mentioned, you can come in, you can tweak things like a date range, you can create custom date ranges, et cetera, and you can have various drop-downs or various other like inputs that people can interact with. That could be a text filter. There's a lot of different filtering widgets that people could use. So on a dashboard level too, it is interactive. So you can come and you can click into things. For example, I'll scroll down. You can actually create drill downs in the embedding as well. So when I click this amazing here, this customer name, it'll actually take us to a new report with kind of a more detailed breakdown pass through. And you can see an example of what this looks like and the usage of this feature and so on. And you can come in, you can see all the values. So a lot of different ways for providing customers the ability to really kind of explore data sets on their own without having to submit a request to your success team or anything like that. So I'll just hit back really quick and I'll go back to this dashboard. But as I mentioned, there is definitely a lot of like interactivity within the embedded offering so that your customers can really come in, click into things, manipulate data without, once again, like having to go back through any other teams or back through like your success team. So yeah, I guess on that note, Evan, I can turn it over to you and you can maybe go through the final example, which is updating customer ID values directly from a database. And this is definitely kind of a more technical approach. So Evan, I will stop my share and I'll turn it over to you to get into it.
Fantastic. Sounds good. Thanks for that, Matt. Share my screen here. All right, so I think in this example, it's just going to raise a few more of these sort of technical questions that we sometimes get, and just to give a bit of an understanding of how that will work here. So let me just push that across. All right, so in the third example, I'm going to present over here to build on what Matt has been telling us about the embedded features that we have. So it's how do you actually take customer tables from your database and be able to use that as part of the embedded dashboarding service that you're offering. So I'd like to give the example of Google Analytics, where each person who logs into Google Analytics sees only their own views. So of course, as your business starts scaling up and you'd like to offer this analytics to people, you'd want this analytics to be built automatically for each new tenant rather than having to build it from scratch again. So what I'm going to show you is a bit of a simple example and a bit of the coding in a Python app that I designed for this purpose. And so there's really more for those developers in the audience who want to look a little bit more under the hood to look at the technicalities and the extent of the flexibility that we give to you. All right, so what we see over here, can we all see this login screen over here?
Yeah, it's coming through.
Can you see it on your side, Matt?
Yeah, it's coming through.
All right, excellent. Okay, so what I'm going to show you here is how actually from the Holistics app. So let's say I've got this login screen where all my users will come through. And so if we take a look at what's in our database, so what Holistics does is that it makes it really easy for you to be able to tell right off the bat what's inside your database and what you can use as part of this system. So for example, if you look over here, what we have is a list of the customer's user table of sorts that you can see in this app. So let's say, okay, so a lot of times, let's say if this user is not part of my user list, so let's say it could just be somebody called maybe Gojek, and let's say the key and password. And what's going to happen is that that's not an entry that's in our table right here. So of course that got rejected. So now let's take a look at what happens if we are a customer that we have from that database. So once we log in, what you're going to see is that it'll pull us over to the dashboard screen with just the values for that user. So similarly to what Matt just explained, this is exactly how you can actually link those values from your logins all the way through to the dashboards. And if you have a look at the URL over here, you realize that it actually doesn't contain any of the values that would indicate, hey, so which customer this URL belongs to, where they're accessing it from. So all those details are actually stored in the back end. So it provides a really robust and secure way for people to access their own specific views. So what I'm going to show you here is actually to go over to the nature of how these filters, the customer ID filters, were created and built. So if you have a look at this dashboard, similar to the one that Matt had shown previously, so what we have are these values, these three customer ID values, which would be shown on the screen. And so all these different widgets, they're actually SQL queries that link to a single filter on this dashboard. And that filter is right up here, the customer filter. So actually, if we were to look at the settings right there, you'll see that the variable name customer ID links to a shared filter source. And if we look at this actual filter, you can see that it's actually being generated directly from the database. So right here, this table name called users, with the value and the text fields, and if we preview this, we're going to see that it has just the three values for the different customer IDs. So now I'm going to show you what will happen if you're actually able to draw values directly from the database and how convenient they can be. So now let's take a look at this example of how, for example, somebody who's just a data analyst could actually interact directly with the database and help to do such an update if it's not being generated automatically from the app. So what I have here is a Google Sheet which contains the user table, which for developers out there, you'd understand that this is something that you'd probably not be using a spreadsheet to update. It'll be generated through the app. But just for the example, for the sake of this example, just to illustrate how you could actually do such an update in a bit more visual way. So let's say we have these other two customers' values that we want to add into this table. So right here, if I were to take this values, and you'll see over here, in Holistics, we make it so simple for anybody who's not even trained as a data engineer to be able to run such data preparation tasks. So it could be from all these different sources, CSV spreadsheet files, tables from other databases. So for example, if you're in the middle of a data migration and you want to shift your users table from an old existing infrastructure to a new one, you can do that easily with Holistics using this setup. So if you actually have a look over there, if we are to now edit this job, and we paste that URL in, you'll see that now it has all 5 of the values that we want. And so now, placing it and pointing it to the exact same table and executing this job, straight away, we're able to update our values of the customers that we have in the database. And if you take a look at the job history log right here, you can actually see the details of the jobs that have been taking place, what's been run, what Holistics has helped to log as part of this process. And if it fails, of course, it'll send you a notification via email. So that way you have a complete view of what's been taking place on the platform. And so you won't ever have to be guessing or asking your technical team, hey, can you tell me what happened with this job? Why did it break? Which sometimes happens if engineers are writing their own scripts. And right there. So now we're actually going to go ahead and have a look at what's in the database now. Let's see, the job is run. Yep, the job is run successfully. So if we take a look at what's in the database now, we're going to see that all the values are there, the ones that we just uploaded into the database. And so now if we have a look at this shared filter again, and we were to refresh this, all right, let's try that again. All right, perhaps it's taking a while for it to refresh from the database site. But now let's have a look at the dashboard. Exactly. So what we're going to see over here is that when we load the dashboard, now it's been able to populate all the different values that we had uploaded into the database for the different customer IDs. And this allows us to actually generate that as part of the app. So for example, if we were to look under the hood at a bit of the coding side of things, so let's take a look here. If you look at the details of the embed link that's been created, let's say for customer ID value 1. Now you're going to be able to see exactly all the details that your developers will need to be able to interact with this embedded iframe and to pass values through to it are all contained here. So for example, what Holistics does in our embedded dashboards is that we use JSON web tokens to ensure the security and the encryption of the values that we pass on the payload. So from here, like you said from before up here, the customer ID values are 1, the secret key, and the expiry time of the tokens. All these values are provided for you, which you can easily pass into your app. And so if you want to have a look at how this would look on the app, so what I have here is actually a app that's built on Flask in Python. And you can see exactly like from that screen before, all I had to do was take the secret key, the embed codes, and to pass that over into a dashboard. So over here, of course, this customer ID values will be generated dynamically, but for the sake of this example, if we were to say, change this value just to 3, then you'll be able to tell that, okay, so this is what's going to pass through. So of course, all you have to do is take that extra step to link the customer ID values to the emails that were used to log in to be able to show that the customer specific view that will happen when you log in. So now if I were to save this and I was to reload what's over here, in fact, let's try customer ID values 4 and 5, since that's the ones that we just uploaded to the database. And now let's run the app again. All right. So now let's have a look at that. So what we see over here is that we have these 2 new customers that are from the database, that are being pulled from the database, the one called Quick Push and Paying On. So now let's try logging on with Quick Push and see what happens. All right, there we go. And we see that that's exactly the view that comes specifically for that customer. And of course, the same interactivity holds that if we want to do a drill down, we can just click build the report that will show the link to that other report. Let's have a look right there. There it is. You can drill through to the next report just by linking them together. And you can make those filters dynamic or static depending on what you want to allow your customers to view. And that's exactly how you would build such a interface very easily for a developer to be able to just go inside your app, insert the variables that you need to make sure that it draws it straight from the database for your different customers, so that way you can scale it a lot easier as your app keeps growing and your user count keeps going up. All right, and with that, I'll just end this section of the presentation. And I think now we'll move over to the Q&A session. And yeah, so Matt, was there anything that you wanted to add to what I just shown in the example there?
Yeah, Evan, the export functionality, can people download out CSVs from the embedded offering?
Yes, absolutely. And maybe that might be a good example to share on the screen so that people can see it straight away. Yep, so absolutely. So if you have a look over here at my screen, you can actually see that from these apps, you allow your customers to download an Excel, download a CSV of the data of those respective, say, tables or widgets on those dashboards. So this is really useful, especially for a lot of times customers want to have access to the data straight away. So some people like to hide their CSV files or make it really difficult for people to access data that should be the customers from the very beginning. And what we've done is that we've made it super simple for people to just go in to their dashboards, pull up the data they need. If they want to go deeper and interact with the raw data, they can. So those options are always there.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's also like really important to mention, especially because a lot of customers that you work with, especially it's like a SaaS business, they might have some sort of established business intelligence process at their company. A lot of our clients, they sell to like enterprise companies. Those enterprise companies have some tool that they've been using for the last 15 years. And that analyst or that person might need to do some further work on the data from your app. And being able to download that out as a CSV, giving people access to the raw data, that allows you to provide them the data without direct database access, because that's something that's also very important. Is most of our customers don't want their customers querying the database directly. And setting up a new database for each customer can also be very difficult, very time consuming. So being able to provide data access to the customer without it actually going directly against your database, that can be like a huge value add. And with Holistics, it's very easy to drop the data out. So something we see from time to time as well is people use the embedding. They'll have some sort of visualizations, but they'll also have like maybe a dashboard that just has some data tables for maybe the key things that a customer might track, and it's very easy for them to export out as a CSV and work with it however they choose to, whether it's on their desktop and it's some sort of established BI process or whatever else that might look like. So yeah, definitely to call that feature.
Absolutely.
Out. So yeah, I know there's probably some questions, Evan, but happy to get into those too now. Wanted to call it the export functionality. I think it is important.
No, absolutely. I think what you mentioned about the accessibility, that's a big part of what we value, the independence and the accessibility that Holistics gives, yet in a very robust way for managing data governance. But yes, exactly. So now we've reached the Q&A section of the presentation of the webinar. So for those of you who have just joined, or if you haven't noticed, there's a Q&A box that you can actually pull up to post any questions that you have to us. And so what we're going to do now is just to take a few questions that the audience has posted over here. All right, so we've got a question about from an audience member asking about building embedded dashboards in-house. So so the question is, the CTO is actually saying that, hey, maybe building it in-house would be the way forward. And so right now they're caught in a place of trying to decide that do they want something that's ready built, or do they want to build something from scratch? So what would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah. So I think my thoughts on it are, it really depends for the company, and it depends on like the number of resources or the amount of resources that you have to spend on it. Most of the companies that chose to work with us, they decided that they need to spend those resources on their core business application, as opposed to working with us, where it's just kind of a simple plug and play. So I think it really depends on the company, depends on the organization. Really kind of comes down to a lot of other software products. Some companies build their own in-house custom billing application. Other companies decide that they would rather have their developers work on the core business app, and they don't do that. So I think it really kind of comes down to, a lot of it is like the company philosophy. That said, I think given how easy Holistics is to work with, I would strongly encourage you to maybe just sign up for a free trial with us and test it out for 2 weeks before spending months trying to scope out the project for a team of developers. So, I think with Holistics, one of the very nice things is you can very quickly prove out whether or not it works, as opposed to trying to build it yourself, where there's a lot of code and a lot of things that you have to do before you can actually get to the point of even like validating it. So I think that's probably like one of the biggest things I would recommend. Especially when it comes to embedded BI, it's just a lot more complicated than people might necessarily think. And with any software project, it's always more complicated than you might think. So would definitely strongly encourage you to test out a free trial, see if it works. And then from there, maybe use that as like a guideline in your decision.
Yeah, quite true. And I think that's something that, especially for a lot of the customers who work with startups, and what they find is when it comes to trying to offer analytics, that it's actually going to be a real drain of their engineering resources, which they really have to devote full time to the building of the product. And that's something, especially in Southeast Asia, is a huge battle for engineering talent, and everyone's struggling to find. Actually, maybe it's not just Southeast Asia. I think it might be the case over in San Francisco too, isn't it? So it's a global problem.
Global problem,
really. Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the experiences that so from the customer slide, case study slide that Matt was sharing, that was something that our customer in Europe was very happy with the holistic solution, which actually allowed them to focus on the product and keep scaling up the key value that they're bringing without having to devote engineering time over to maintaining an analytics dashboard, an analytics system, even maybe the logs to be able to catch the problems that occur, because that's actually a very intensive process that a lot of people underestimate. I think even one of the co-founders of Holistics first, when he joined Holistics, he thought, hey, maybe that problem's not that difficult. Maybe I can come up with something. And the more he dug into it, he realized, wow, it's really the intricacies of trying to balance the analytics system coupled with your organization's development and the evolution of your teams. It actually becomes quite a beast and more a lot larger than people would expect.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of software as a whole. It's just always much more complicated than it seems at first glance. And it's really a matter of like developer resources and developer time, and a huge chunk of that. If you're paying Bay Area salaries to build out an embedded offering, I mean, it's not even close. And just from a time as well, time perspective, just amount of time like not being spent on your core application as opposed to, an analytics tab. And I think the other thing I'd say too, just around like embedded analytics, is it tends to be a thing that customers are like asking about. So I think when people have the requirement for embedded BI, it's because their customers are putting a strain on them. So, kind of the next component is like how quickly can you respond and get back to your customers and provide the functionality that they're looking for. And I think it's very important to take that into consideration as well. If you were to do it yourself, it could be a 6-month process of just setting everything up. So could even be much longer. So not only is it developer resources, but it's also not providing your customers with what they're looking for. So I think that's probably enough on that topic. Evan, there's probably some other questions as well. Do you want to get to those?
Sure. Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, but thanks for sharing those points. So we've got a question here asking about whether our embedded reports and dashboards are mobile friendly. And yes, absolutely they are. They are all mobile responsive. And so you'll see that if you actually access it from an iPhone, from an Android, because of the iframe setup that it's been designed in, it will actually load according to the mobile. And we've actually built it to be able to scroll right through all the different reports on the dashboard in a very clean way. So yes, the answer is yes. And so another question over here. So, all right, so there are 2 questions, but let me address this one first. So the question is about restricting of data exports from the dashboard. And so over here it says, in case summary widget is built with data you don't wish to expose, can you restrict those exports, or should you make sure the raw data only contains data that you're okay to expose? So actually what we do in Holistics is that we do offer pretty robust controls in terms of permissions, in terms of what people can access. So depending on the user that is accessing the platform, you can actually limit what they can see. So even though it's the same report, but a different user with different permissions will have a restricted view. But other than that, inside that situation, for the exporting of data, then the rest of the data that they are permitted to see, they will be able to download it from those widgets. But perhaps I think that's something that we can explore deeper with this audience member over here. So we'll probably reach out to you after this webinar to try to understand your use case a bit better to see how we can explore that. But thanks very much for that question. All right, and so we've got another question here asking about access in terms of how many users they can have accessing these embedded dashboards. So yeah, Matt, maybe you could help to shed some light on that.
Yeah, so I think it's very much up to the individual customer. So one of the huge things that people really like with Holistics embedding is that it's flexible. So by that, I guess by that I mean, you can control, because because the permissioning and the setup is all through the JWT payload, you have control over that level of access. So In some companies that we work with, they embed dashboards to, maybe a single person. Other companies, or single person per customer for one of their customers. Kind of a confusing phrase. But as far as limits of the number of people you can embed it out to, there aren't really limits. You have complete control over that. I'd say the limit is really around how you plan on sharing this and how you plan on sharing it with your users. So that's something that I think you would have to think about, whether it's like embedding as some sort of premium offering. So sometimes we see embedding as like a huge upsell opportunity for our customers, where they, to get exposure to the analytics package of their application, it's on like an enterprise feature set, and it's a path of upselling customers. At other customers, it might just be a simple dashboard that gets put into the web app. So there's a huge variance. On our side, we don't. We really leave it up to you, and we let you, like I said, control it with the JWT payload, so you can control who sees what at your various customers. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that question. Unless there's something I missed.
No, I think that's absolutely it. So absolutely, the access is really depending on how many, say, users that you'd be planning to have on your dashboard. That's something that Holistics is fully able to support. So yeah, no limits there. And so yeah, so I guess what I'll do is we'll just wrap up the session since we've started to go a little bit over time. So yeah, maybe I'll hand the final word over to you, Matt.
Yeah, I just would like to say, thanks to everyone who joined today. Of course, for those of us who couldn't make it, we're going to send out a link to the webinar so you can always download it or see it at any point in the future. And then, yeah, if anyone else has any other questions, please get in touch with us. We're happy to help. We're happy to work with you, and really excited that you spent some time today learning about our embedding. On that note, I guess, yeah, once again, thanks again. We'll sign off, and hope to hear from everybody soon.
Sure. And just to share a little bit more, that these webinar sessions that we're running on a monthly basis will help people to understand a bit more about the data landscape in Southeast Asia, as well as in the US, over there in San Francisco with Matt. And so a lot of times, do stay tuned for the different case studies we'll be sharing. And we're about to start a new series together with some of our partners and customers. We'll be sharing their experiences, perhaps dealing with data issues or building data teams or trying to deliver analytics to the customers. So do stay tuned for that. Do sign up for our newsletters to be updated on the latest happenings, and check out our blog at blog.holistics.io. And yeah, thanks very much for joining us today. And we're all looking forward to seeing you around and being part of the Holistics family.
Cool. Thanks, Evan. Thanks, everybody. We'll hope to hear from everybody soon.
All right. Take care, everyone. See you soon.